Can you bring a seat in?
Hello and welcome. We're beginning a new recording of it. Oh, nice to see you. That's great. Can we just prove that there's an audience here? Is there anybody here?
Yay!
Oh, great. Well, fantastic. So we're really looking forward to this. This is a tale of an amazing gentleman who we all know, 87 years young. And he is, of course, the person that you're sitting in a room that Hugh opened 4 years ago. It's amazing. It's 4 years ago we did this, and now we're into 4 years of different talks about different Fintry things and other things. But here we are, and we thought it was definitely about time we really found out a lot more about you. So all we need to do is just go right back to the very beginning. Hugh, anything about this picture?
Yes, that's me in the summer of 1939. Sitting outside the dike that runs from Balafart Farm out to the road. I think that's round about June or July time. Of course, I was born in Balafart, as was my elder brother John.
In the house?
In the house at Balafart.
None of your hospital stuff?
No.
And your brothers, yes, so here we are.
Yeah, there's three of us. There's three of us. John, the oldest, myself in the middle. John was 1937, I was 1938, and George was younger, he was 1941. And he was born in Craigton Cottage, the little cottage up on the hillside, just below the Doonan. That's where we moved to after Balafart.
And so let's just look at you guys a little later. Everybody will recognise where we are.
Yeah, this is about 10 years afterwards.
Where is it? Do you know what's happening?
This is at Kilcrook, and I think it's about 2017 or 18. John died in 2022, so it's sometime before that. He was still able to travel, so it must be about 2017.
And where are they?
We're up at Kilcrook. We're up.
No, I was thinking in life today. Sorry, where do they live now? Sorry.
Yes, Brother John lives in Los Angeles. Lived in Los Angeles. His widow's still there yet. I'm here, of course. And George, he's down in Norfolk. He's not at all well. He's suffering from cancer and not in very good health at all.
Okay, can I ask what they did? Because we're going to find out about your life shortly. So,
yes,
John,
Brother John, we should maybe say, we should maybe go through where I went to after Balafart.
All right.
Yeah. The lease of Balafart was up in November term 1939, but my father stayed on, and it was purchased by the Mrs. Ross Trust, and my father worked for the Ross Trust until January 1941, and we moved out and moved to Craigton Cottage, which belonged to my dad's cousin, Jim McEwen, that wasn't Fintry's father. He owned the estate, the Craigton estate at that time, and we moved there, and we were there from 1941 till 1952. The early part of our life, we didn't see a soul. I'll tell you something a wee bit later about that. We're up there, and sometimes there was nobody came other than like a Jimmy Leach delivering for Craig's and the groceries and things like that. But we enjoyed our stay up there for the 11 years that we were up there. And after that, we got a chance to get a house in Kilcrook Avenue number 6, next door to Michelle Bennett, this side of Michelle Bennett. And we were there from 1952 until 1972. My father died in 1971, and my mother couldn't stay on her own, so I bought a house up in Aberdeen, and my mother moved up and stayed with us from 1971 till 1976, and I was promoted south. But I should maybe just say we went to school, primary school from.
I'll hold that for a moment, because we're probably just jumping a little ahead in a way. So because we'll just go to the Balafart farm and looking back at that. So this is a picture that some people have seen before. Is this the same building as there today?
No,
right,
no,
what was it?
There was a new house built about 1890, which my grandfather, who's there, built. The one that Brenda stays in now, that was built by my grandfather. And in that photograph, that's my grandfather in the middle. That's the old Ballyfark farm, and my grandmother to his left. Starting over on the left-hand side, and the outside with the lamb, the dark lamb between his legs, that's my Uncle John, Betty Edmond's father. Next to him is my dad, and that's him with a wee lamb in front of him. As I said, my grandfather next, my granny, and that's my Aunt Lizzie, who married Robert Bain and moved away down to England. And Uncle Jim over on the far right, standing with a walking stick.
And then the dog.
And the dog, of course. My father was always pointing out that dog's name was Friday. Friday, that dog's name was Friday. Yeah. And you'll see above the door there, where it's the word Ballyfark, there is the old sign that used to be on the licensed premises at Balgair, that was moved to Ballyfark when the Edmonds moved from Balgair to Ballyfark in 1813.
Now, this is quite hard to understand, but this was technically a hotel.
It was a licensed, it was a stopping place for drovers, and all my previous ancestors all took in drovers, and they had their own still. This still was a licensed one. All the other stills owned by Edmonds were not licensed.
We'll probably come to these as well. Okay.
Mention them later.
Yes. So it is a huge family. All we're doing now is not expecting you to read this, but just looking at the scale of the family, because Hugh's done lots of research. I'm going to move in, but we'll just point out that you've got a red line. You're at the bottom. And this is your tracing all the way, the red line, right back to Patrick, and we're going back to the
Patrick Edmond, who was in Netherlands in 1543. He died. He must have died in or about 1543, because that was the date of his will. And his family seemed to have moved over to Balfron, and we're in where the church is now. You know, when you go into the car park at the church, instead of turning in right at the very end into the car park at the edge of the church, you go straight on up that road, and that was called Kirton of Balfron, Balfrone.
So the vast family, and you've clearly got the full direct descendancy over them. So that places you in a really, I can safely use this word correctly, unique position, in that you are the only person we know in Fintry at all who traces family directly 500 years plus back and still living here. That's the critical thing. It's different.
Yeah. There's some other pieces in that we'll maybe mention later.
As you come, I think you'll come into some of these characters in different ways, but it's extremely big. So, this
is my great grandfather and my great grandmother. He was actually born in Western Bulgaria, and they moved as a boy in 1813 to Ballyfark. And his wife is Janet Patterson, the same Pattersons as the Pattersons that were in Craigend and Woodend.
I'm just intrigued about also because I'm guessing they're dressing up for the photo in a way. Do you remember?
He was known as Old Bally, and he was a JP, and he was called on to sort out many disputes at toll houses where a big lot of cattle were coming through, and they couldn't agree on a price for them passing through, and he was called on to mediate. And he was very popular because of that. Because I think I can remember Father telling me about one case that someone who had been at the Balgair Fair and was going to Falkirk Tryst with over 1,000 head of cattle, and they passing through Lernock Toll, and the tollman wanted to count the cattle. But my father said, "Are you not better with just taking £5 from him and letting him go?" So that's what happened. My grandfather said, "Take £5 and let him go, and you don't need to count them." You're better with £5 is nothing.
And interesting, I think there's a little genetic pass on for you, because we'll talk about your job later on, but after you retire, you're asked to do the same role, to mediate for farmers.
Yeah. Towards the end of my time in employment, I actually looked after three trade organisations: the VTSC Growers Association, the Scottish Seed Potato Growers Association, and the National Association of Seed Potato Merchants. And I was their secretary and treasurer, and I looked after. They didn't go to law on anything because they had their own conditions of sale, and the courts were not interested in taking them on because they had their own conditions of sale. But arbitration was a very expensive thing. So they decided, as they thought I was a fairly fair person, they would ask me to be a mediator. So I got the job of cases where it was not a lot of money and it wasn't worth going to arbitration. They asked me to mediate, and that was my job for about 9 years, I think it was.
It must be quite satisfying.
It was, because nobody ever seemed to argue with me. They seemed to just accept it.
And the same is true today. Now, McEwen family, your family.
Yes. There's quite a story about this. You know Jim McEwen, that used to be in the Lurgan and Creighton, and then finished his life at Cumalt or Woodfoot. That in the middle is his father, and his grandfather is just below him. That's Charlie McEwen, who married, that's Jeannie Edmond. Now, when my great-grandfather you saw there gave a dowry to Jeannie to marry Charlie, because she already had Jeannie was already born. So she got £80, and that was 1876, I think it was.
That tells us a lot about how social history has changed, doesn't it?
Yes. £80 was a huge amount of money in that time. I think it was somewhere about £20,000 now. Anyway, they married, and the family was nearly all daughters bar one son, Jim. That's him in the middle, and that was Jim McEwen's father, and that's who we rented the cottage for him at Creighton. He was the laird of Creighton. He bought the big house, and it was him that actually paid or got the people to take it down. Now, there's one person here I was going to tell you about. It's on the front there. You probably all have heard of her, Nell Welsh. She used to be, John Welsh was the joiner who was in the house where
Joy Moore
is
next
now.
to the hall.
Underneath there was John Welsh. He was famous for his wooden barrows and cow carts for turnips and things in the farm. Now, Nell, when she died, this is quite a wee story, this, she had put in her will that she wished her ashes spread at Pranston Roden, because they were in Pranston from 1890 to 1906. Once she died, it was the first cremation I ever knew of. It was in the late 1980s. Jim Docherty was a minister in Fintry.
Oh, right.
And the funeral, the scattering of the ashes was organised for the end of Pranston Road End, and I can remember going up there and all standing at Pranston Road End. You see that? Well, that's Pranston there. That's the road end. That's the Kippen Road there. That's the road into Pranston there. This is in Pranston Garden. Anyway, when the Edith and Dorothy Welsh had divided the ashes from a box into two little jars of some kind, and at the appropriate time when the minister was doing the prayer, they scattered the ashes. But just as they scattered it, a puff of wind came and blew the ashes all over us. And I can remember tasting it, and it was terrible. It was quite horrible. So that's a funny story about that.
Because they were unaccustomed to ashes in those days. So.
No, we didn't. In fact, I had never heard of cremation until that time, other than cremations in places like India.
Okay. There was something else crossed my mind there. It was partly about prancing, because another lady had asked about.
The lady was here on last Wednesday. She says, "Why do you say Pranston?" I says it's pronounced Pranston, but if you look back the early censuses, it said Provanston, but it said in brackets pronounced Pranston. So I don't know why, but that was on the old censuses.
Okay, it's a magnificent family, looking family. So we have run through where you've been.
Oh yeah.
Will we take just
go back to Creighton, where we moved to Creighton in 1941.
There's a family in that house today.
Yeah, they were here on last Wednesday. Yeah. It was about Lawrence's, Tom Lawrence and his family.
So what technically was it on the estate?
It was Gardener's Cottage, and it was also the laundry for the big house. That's where they did all the sheets. I remember when we were there, round the back there was a courtyard with a great big mangle that had 56-pound weights hanging on counterbalance things to give the weight on the rollers. And in Fintry, at that time in the early 1940s, most houses in Fintry didn't have flush toilets. We were lucky. We had two. We had one inside and one outside for the outside workers. We didn't have electricity or anything up there. We didn't have electricity till we moved down to Cook Avenue in 1952. But we did go to school from Creighton Cottage. We walked down over Easterton and down along the Lade side and down the avenue to the school here. I went to the school in 1943. My brother was there a year before me.
So you're down in Fintry Primary School, of course, the one that's at the Cross.
Yeah, the Cross.
Now,
the Stuart School.
Hugh, you only went there for Primary 1 and 2 because of a happening.
Yes, we'd been there roughly, Brother John and myself had been there roughly about 2 years, and my mother was quite annoyed because I couldn't even read or write or do anything. So she went down to see Mrs. Culbertson, and she had a long conversation, quite heated I believe, and Mrs. Culbertson says, your boys are uneducatable hillbillies.
Hillbillies.
She called us hillbillies. So my mother decided there and then that we were moving and we were going to go to Balfour.
And we haven't got that moment on TikTok. No, it would have, right. So, but your mum then, did what for you?
We went from the cottage right down to the avenue along where Margaret Rowan is now, and that's where we got Hamish McEwen picked us up to take us to
a taxi
to take us to the bus
for the next 5 years.
And we finished our primary education at Balfron, and we then went on to the secondary, and Brother John actually did extremely well. He was the dux of the school, in spite of being a hillbilly.
And Annie might have been in your class, but we were thinking at Primary 1 and 2 it's hard to remember who was...
No, Annie was at Fintry School.
At the beginning, though, in the first 2 years, yes, at the very beginning. No, that's right, I'm not so sure. Okay, here's your secondary school class.
This is 1951.
Okay.
And there's quite a few in here that you probably know. On Wednesday we had Helen Watson here. Her brother-in-law and sister-in-law in this photograph.
Okay.
That's me there, by the way.
This is Hugh,
and
with hair. Just so Hugh, we've got to take that in.
That's me at the age of 13.
All right.
And next to me is Billy Scott. That's Helen Watson's first husband's brother. Yeah.
Okay.
Hugh Smith. related to Meg through the Lockharts. And this here's Jim Russell, used to be the farming at Netherton of Glenboig, and George, my brother, at the outside. And the other, on the front row.
Yes, all right, before we do the big reveal. But yeah, I'm just going to pause for a second, because I think right now everybody's going, well, could I do that with my school class? Could I actually name them and the places and the people? This is incredible.
That one there's Alan Brown too.
Wow.
Mind Alan Brown? David Brown's father, David that does the plaster, did the plastering in here.
Now, we're just going to zoom in. We've got a front row, a young, and you could name some others without doing the reveal yet, and if you want to. Okay.
Well, that there is Grace Scott, who married the chappie MacDonald, the butcher shop in Drimmen.
Right.
That's Billy Scott's sister. But this girl here,
right. Okay.
She was a policeman's daughter in Balfron's. Dingwall, Sergeant Dingwall, and that was Sandra Dingwall. She was a lovely lassie.
How lovely was she?
I had a fancy for her, but she never took any interest in me.
You had a fancy for her?
Yes, but she never took an interest in me, really.
Oh, okay. And she married, but we don't know.
She's
anymore.
married, and I know about 30 or 40 years ago she was over in 5.
Okay. So, playing about in the village as a youngster, I don't think of any games. Before we come to kind of scout stuff, just ordinary play, would you, marbles and all the rest of it?
It's just all the, everything bar what you do with Facebook and things like that.
Aye.
Everything's away from that.
Real play, okay.
Yeah.
But there were, the courses
The scouts they were part of our life, right? Even before we moved from Creighton, we used to come down over the Endrick Bog side and go up to the hostel, because that's when the first scouts, about 1950 I think we met there. Would that be right, Bill?
Probably.
About 50.
About 1950 we met in where Margaret Burgess' house is now.
We'll have a look at the
used to
scout
be the
buildings
hostel.
in a second. So this is what we call the beach in Fintry.
Yeah, this is just along here. My mother used to be terribly wild at us going playing in the Endrick there, because at that time we didn't have a sewage works in Fintry. It was just the sewage for the Kilcrook Avenue come down across the road, and there was a big tank there which was always overfilled and running over, and raw sewage was running out to the Endrick, just about where we are here just now. And down there, we're not far down from the outlet, and we used to play in the river.
So
my mother used to get wild about it.
who's that?
That's me.
All right, this is you.
And I think these two, one's Jay Nichol and one's, is it Stuart Nichol? I
mean, this is from a tiny postcard type thing that we've zoomed right in on.
And one of these in the water there's Duncan Bennett. I don't know which one.
Who's going to come from South Queensferry to give us a talk in December. When we zoomed in, we didn't realise how many boys were playing there. Their heads were bobbing out. It's just
and there's quite a few sitting over in the banking on the other side there.
So, did you tell your mother you've been playing in the river?
No, we did our best not to, but sometimes got out.
So where the scouts met in different locations.
That's where we first met, and the piece that's.
Are you looking at for the room?
Yeah, we went upstairs in the room, and
Upstairs,
you used to get by in wartime.
What was that, Annie?
It's stuff out the shop.
Yes,
stuff out the shop.
there was jerky, beef, dried beef and things like that, and biscuits that you couldn't bite because they were that hard.
Treats!
They sold them there anyway.
Other places the scouts moved around?
Then we moved and we met above, upstairs in where Gavin Scott stays.
This is Gavin Scott's house. This is a missing house now, we know.
We used to go in the close, which is the door that the Mackays go in.
Oh, Mackays.
Where they go in, that's the door you used to go in, and then you went up the stair and into through the building and into the bit above what was the garage at that time? Hamish McEwen's garage.
And we can show you it's a large room because the room that's gone next door was the girls' school that's gone.
That whole building's gone.
You see, upstairs has got roof lights, equivalent of Veluxes, and windows, so that becomes a large hall. And the head teacher lived down below. And that's a separate story, but there was a girls' school constructed by the laird at Kilcrook, which was way ahead of his time.
It was the Spears. They took an interest in the young people, and especially girls. That at that time in the early 1800s, up to 1860, they didn't get education at all. But he felt that they should be educated, and approximately 60 girls were educated up there.
So also now in what was obviously the mill itself had a fourth floor. You were scouts there.
Yes, to begin with, Tom Riddle had the downstairs, and we met there for a very short time. But then we got the chance of the whole of the upstairs, the very top flat. And
you're saying Colonel Tom Riddle was living in?
He was staying in Mill House at that time.
Oh, right, I got you. Okay.
And this is where he did his skipping exercises and things in the basement there.
Okay, a vision.
And we used to meet in there for a wee while, but it wasn't very long because we got a chance of the upstairs for Auntie Sunshine, and we met there regularly. There were two troops. There was the Lions and the Eagles. I was an Eagle. I can't remember what you were, Bill. No, I can't remember.
And we have to reveal that you're not always an angel, Hugh. What did you do?
It wasn't only me to blame.
Okay, right, all right.
It was
What did you do?
Victor Perrick was our scout leader at the time, and we were going camping along at Glenboig in the wood across the road from the farm. And we were taking the bell tent, which was stored upstairs there, and taking it down all the stairs was a bit of a hassle, so we decided we would open the window and throw it out the window. So we did that. The only big problem was we had to look, there was a car parked down below.
And it landed on the car.
It landed on the car.
And you ran down and apologised profusely?
No, we disappeared.
And keeping on the theme of the year, we'll come to that in a minute, there's another story coming. Oh, yeah, that there is a laddie at heart in you. We had a circus.
Yes.
And you enjoyed it a lot.
Before the council houses across the road were built by the council, by Crudens in 1949 or something. 49, I think they were built. Because we were the second occupiers in 1952, so it must have been in the late 40s. The circus came there to overwinter. It usually did something in Glasgow and then moved out here to park up during their quiet time for a while. And they did have an odd show out there. They put the big tent up just almost across the road from here in the field. There were no houses in there at all at that time. And the big tent went up, and there was umpteen clowns. I know there was one elephant, but the biggest amount of animals they had was Palomino ponies, where the girls stood on their backs and did acrobatics on their backs. It was quite most enjoyable, I would have said. They had no lions or tigers to my knowledge, but I can remember one thing they did have was showgrounds, and one of the things that entertained me most was that it had little air rifles which did fire slugs, and they bent in the middle, but they were all sugary, and you no way you'd ever hit anything with them. And what they did was they tied clay pipes onto the trees. There's a tree awful close to your house that they used to use, and that's where they tied the pipes, and there was a bar put up, and you had to shoot and see if you broke a pipe. I did manage to buy one, and you got a coconut if you broke a pipe.
And we know that the circus still exists today. They're in the north of England. We phoned them when we thought that we were all trying in the village to do something for the Queen's Jubilee. It would be nice if they could come back. And you called it Eddie Pinder's circus. Yes. When I phoned, it was an Eddie Pinder who answered, a grandson, still running. But they were all booked up that year. So it would have been great to see. But I can't get over, there was an elephant wintered in Fintry. Oh, the concept, amazing. Right. So, because you enjoyed the air guns, it then led you to get more dangerous as a laddie. What else did you do?
This would be in the early 50s when the ammunition dumps were still all the way up the road to Kilcrook, and from the North Lodge right up to where the road turned away to the Lade side. There was ammunition dumps all the way up there. It wasn't only there was also up the Kippen Road above Balafar.
Vast stores.
Big stores of mainly machine gun bullets, but we used to get in and pinch an odd one and 2 pair of pliers and take the bullet out and then put the gunpowder on top of a fence post and throw matches at it.
I know.
But we got quite brave once and took a whole box. And we took them up to, I don't know, up beside your house there's an old ruined building that had it was the ice house, and a good part of it was a cellar underground to keep it cool. And we hid it in there for a while, and we got a bit worried about it, so we decided we would bury it. And we took it along the Lade side, behind your house, right along to where Jimmy Hamilton used to have his hens, and we dug a hole and buried it. Probably still there yet.
Did Victor Perrott or one of his brothers not have quite a serious accident with your game with the bullets?
This was from ammunition dumps that were along opposite Glenboig, Upper Glenboig, Easter Glenboig. Easter Glenboig. There used to be, and there was hand grenades and he had taken a hand grenade and pulled the pin and then to throw away, and he lost his fingers. I think he lost 2 fingers. And that was Victor Perrott.
And living out here, of course, there's no ambulance service. You're running for the GP somehow to get them to come and just bandage it.
That explains 5 years ago when our house extension was being built. Excuse me, I've got a cold. A hand grenade was dug up.
That's right.
And the authorities had to come out, and Andy and I had to be taken away and everything.
Wow.
And they actually detonated.
Detonated.
And it was huge.
It would be.
Yes, we think that up here in the school playground and up there are probably a number of others. But I never knew about this until we spoke to you. Well, let's move to leaving school. So you get to the leaving age. Where do you go from Balfour High?
After I left school, I worked for a wee while for Ladies Anti-Sunshine at Kilcrook with...
Could you give Anti-Sunshine's technical name?
Ruth Mingus.
Ruth
Mingus. That was Jimmy Mingus's widow. The wee laird, as he was called. That was James Mingus, son of Sir Walter Mingus. And he died, I think, about 1945, I think it was.
But you went to work with him?
And I worked with Archie McKeach, who was the general. He did the forestry work and the general upkeep work, and old Charlie Cole, who was a builder, he did the pointing of all walls and things. That wall that's out from the South Lodge goes round, and it used to go right along the road to the sewage works near enough. It was the same wall, it was unbroken wall. There was no breaks in it at all because there were no houses of any kind in there. And that wall was all pointed by Charlie Cole and I when I was at school.
Where did you go on to work from there, looking at your trail of
Well,
jobs?
after that I went to the West of Scotland Agricultural College. The first year was to Glasgow University, but it was the same course. And then I went, but before I went there I had to do a year's practical, and I worked for the Claylands at Balfron, where the big place is now, where I can't mind their name now. It was Patterson at that time. It was Robert Patterson. I worked there for a year. I enjoyed that work, and I had to seeing the books and keep a copy of them and take them to the college when I went to the college. And I did pass my college, but the important thing that during the the summertime at the college, I started on the seed potato inspector's course in Edinburgh, and that's what got me keen on potatoes, because I really enjoyed that. I went to East Craigs and I went to a course. You had to identify 76 varieties and all the diseases that the potatoes took. And I took that course the first year, and I got 100% in variety and disease identification. So I was immediately made a senior inspector. Yes, it was not a huge, you didn't get a big actual remuneration for it, but you did get expenses. You got you got mileage allowance, which was about 10 times what it took to run the car, and you also got subsistence allowance, and the two of them added up to an awful lot more than you got in money. So that kept me going in much better condition at the college than I would have otherwise done. But it also made me keen on potatoes, that when I left college qualified, I applied for a job with the Potato Marketing Board, and I went to London and took an interview, and I was offered the job, but it wasn't a very good pay. So, but the Animal Breeding Research Organisation, they were looking for staff, and their salary was 3 times what the salary was being offered by the Potato Marketing Board. So I took that on, and that was at Life Bank in Peeblesshire. I was looking after a nutrition experiment where animals all at the same time were all fed the same diet, but at different amounts, a balanced diet. The ones that got fed a small diet never grew. The ones that was fed a balanced, necessary diet were in first class condition, and the ones that were overfed, I thought it was cruel. They just grew up, and the legs couldn't hold them and things like that. But you still you fed everything, you weighed everything that was fed into them, and you weighed everything that was fed out that came out of them. It wasn't a pleasant job, and there was only 2 of us looked after them 24 hours a day. So the money was, so after a year and a half, I said, I'm not staying here.
And the potato marketing people had been back at you again and again
all the
saying,
time and all the time.
"Will you come?"
And I said, I'll go and take that job, even though it's at less money. So I did that, and that's where I am now.
And it was absolutely a great success. You became very well known through Scotland. You were
over the years, I just gradually worked up through the ranks, and in the 1980s, I was promoted to the general manager for Scotland and the north of England. And every Monday morning, I think it was, I can't remember which day, I think it was Monday, Jimmy Mack had a programme at 6 o'clock in the morning. I used to have to go up to Queen Margaret Drive and do an interview about the prices and the crops, and particularly in Ayrshire. It was mainly in the early season when the early potatoes were being dug in Ayrshire.
And of course, all of this led ultimately, showing your evidence that you've kept lots of news cuttings. There are several books, yes, fascinating books in our archives of all of that career, leading ultimately to your MBE.
Well, after I retired in 1998, I got the New Year's Honours List of 1999. I was awarded an MBE for my services to the seed potato industry, and that's June 1999.
Which is just wonderful to see.
At Holyrood Palace, that's when I was awarded my MBE.
Scrubs up well.
Yeah. I'm sure. There are so many, and we're just going to dip into a few key ones. We couldn't cover, we would be here for days if we touched them all. When we were building the museum and we began more research, and when I'd worked in the village, I used to tell the kids about 3 schools, and as we were constructing the museum, we ended up realising we could have accounted for 6 schools. We didn't know that. So could you tell us one I never knew of, the Lernock School?
Yes, the Lernock School, I don't know if you know, when you got the Kippen Road to the first junction at Lernock Toll, the road goes to the Castle Stirling, and the other way goes to the Honey Home. At that crossroad, the toll was on the corner on the left hand side. Across the road in the wood, just at the end of the wood, there was another building which was Lernock School. It was operating in the 17 and 1800s, I know that, right up till I think James Edmond went off to America, to Canada in 1840.
No, you're just throwing in the name James Edmond. Your family is doing what in the school?
My father's uncle and aunt they were married, and they were both teachers, and they were both Edmonds. My uncle was James Edmond, who was born in Pranston, and his wife was Kathleen Edmond, who was born in Ballafark. My great granny's, that gentleman you saw is sister that was in the photograph, and they were the teachers at Lernock. They had taught at the Arden Prior School before they had come to Lernock, right enough.
I think I'm just going to go past that for a minute. No, right, I'm going to leave that. Come back again. The Lernock School, I just wondered if we had a picture. But so the evidence of this that's still with us in the museum today is this book that you just brought and casually put down on my kitchen table about 5 years ago. And we've had it restored. And this is from 1820, James Edmond, the head teacher's book for which all his lessons for putting on the blackboard in purely arithmetic, and it goes on for hundreds of pages, and so we know that the curriculum given there was astonishing. It will teach people. You are at the end of this, welcome to just have a gentle look through this, and flick through don't flick through the pages, turn them. I'm watching Kate. But there is so incredible amount of work done to prepare people for a working life.
And there is also proof that it was 1820. Seemingly, David's brother found that the watermark on the pages was 1820.
Yep, so it's wonderful.
Do you think that there were adults also, because I know this is during the Weavers
Yes.
movement, that someone suggested to me that these may have been also used in adult learning for people wanting to improve
Evening classes are equivalent.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting,
Like going to
right?
an evening
Amazing.
class. There's so much.
Because the standard's so high.
Yeah, it's very high. It's also a lot about how to run your business.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I thought that was an interesting suggestion that was made, that maybe he did night school as well.
I think he
Maybe he did, I don't know. Every
I
possibility.
think that's quite possible. I know at Stirling University, very keen to look at the social history. It's in the book. We took it everywhere around Scotland, the National Library, and they all said they'd never seen anything like it. It's ours. The Ballafark, I think we'll just go to the Fintry Home Guard. What's your family to do with that? Your dad?
Well, my father was in the Home Guard, and they met opposite Mark where I am now, on Bogside. Where they teach the concrete are out across. There were three buildings there, plus an anti-aircraft gun, anti-aircraft light, searchlight. And my father used to go down there every night to the Home Guard, and every older man who wasn't at the war had to go to the Home Guard, and they had no armaments. They only had pitchforks and grapes and things like that. The only gun they had was my father's 12 bore, and it was shared out with everybody. Not that they could have done much. They did a bit of marching about and exercises of all kinds.
And they would blockade bridges to practice exercise.
Well, my father might telling about Captain Clark, who ran the Home Guard. He stayed where Chris Draper and Jilly stayed. Captain Clark stayed in there, and he actually ran the Home Guard. And they had a guard on the bridge here in case the Germans came, which was so unlikely, but the only armament they had was the 12 bore. That's all they had.
The Germans would have run at the pitchforks, I'm sure, the other way. The first car in Fintry was, of course, an Edmonds car.
Yeah, that's
we've got
A
a painting.
painting up there done by Kate Howells.
Yes, that's true. We've got
Well,
a
there it's there.
painting,
I've
yes.
got it on there. That's my father driving there. My aunt Anne in the back seat, and my dad's cousin Kate McCrimmon.
Okay. And
That was 1924. The car was 1924.
and there wasn't
Morris
even
Cowley.
there was no car at Colcrue Castle. What would
No.
Ruth Mingus do?
Ruth Mingus, when she needed to be taken somewhere, she used to send up to Auntie Anne a boy to come down and to take Auntie Sunshine wherever she wanted to go.
So,
They were very pally anyway. Ruth Mingus and Auntie Anne were very pally.
whose house is this today? This is where you get petrol for the car.
Yeah, that was Hamish McEwen was next door there, and that was
It would
big
be
shop.
where Stiggs was, is that right?
that's where Stig is.
okay.
It's up at the cross.
At the
Uh-huh.
cross, okay, just next to it. And that was your garage.
That's the
The
Clachan.
Clachan, so way back there was a really drinking alcohol problem across Scotland, whether we're in the same, another crisis, I've no idea. But there was a huge attempt to try and turn that tide because of the impact on families. And so the Clachan was at one time dry, along with lots of other hotels around here.
Yeah.
To make them dry, there was a temperance book. Could you explain, Hugh?
Yes. When the Stephens had the hotel in, I think it was the 1940s, they didn't have a license. There was a table, you could have a wine or something at the table, but you were not allowed to drink whiskey and things like that. You were not allowed that at all. And they had a temperance book, and we have it here. I managed to keep a hold of it, and
So-
maybe find in here something very interesting.
You have obviously you have to join the club. I'm just going to turn to the first page.
You'd become a member of the Temperance Society.
And obviously swear an oath and meet. And so we have these people signing up, and they're all villagers. We have who they are. And we've got, age and the last birthday is quite interesting. The date and kind of what they do, and then a membership fee. So your father absolutely joins and does that. What happens if I turn the page, Hugh?
You'll find his name there. A violation. Fined 1 shilling and 6pence.
Okay, so he's in trouble. I think lots of them. It's quite tough. So
Quite
that's
a
what
lot of
happens.
people that some of you'll know there.
Shamed and fined.
Finding.
So I'm putting that back because it is fragile, but it will let you a little keep at it today if you want. It's really interesting. We're just dipping into these stories. Your family, what we called the Warhorse story, and it was turned on its head in the last year, I would say.
Just over a year ago, I took a lot of my uncle's papers, letters in particular, sent from the war in Gallipoli, Egypt, Malta, and Jerusalem in the Palestine area.
You took these to
they took them all to
Stirling Archives.
the Stirling Archives, and she did a tremendous job. She got them all into order and could work out where my Uncle Jim was all during his career in the war, in the First World War. And I was quite amazed at what she found out, because the story passed down to us as a family over the years was all his horse furniture was sent home after the horse was killed, when he was killed. But this was not the case. His horse was not killed. His horse was sent home.
Yes.
So there was Pam found that somewhere in the records. So
We've always thought it was a horse.
The horse was killed with my uncle.
But he set off from Balafart and was gifted a horse to take to war.
When he went out to the war, he was so keen in the forces that his mother, he was his mother's favourite. I don't think there's any doubt about it, because he was given a horse, and he was allowed to take his horse with him when he went off. First of all down to England, and then he was over in Ladybank for a while, but then he went off to Africa, Egypt, and Gallipoli. He was one of the few that managed to survive Gallipoli. The majority were killed. But some of his letters were so descriptive that Pam says it would make a great film, because his description of the bullets whizzing overhead and that sort of thing in his letters was quite...
it's completely charismatic. And
yeah, that's the
vivid.
word I was trying to think of.
Yeah. And he describes about meeting Nepalese mule drivers at Gallipoli
Yeah,
and how they communicated with kind of hand signs and stuff.
yeah.
Very clear. But his love for Balafak was
Oh yes,
He's
yeah.
always
Evidence.
asking
Always
about
asking
what's happening on the farm.
Yeah.
Always in his letters.
always asking, you know, have you planted the beans yet? Things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful story, and his bugle killed everything I
And
hear.
everything he had at the time was all sent back, and including the well, I don't know, it must have come back with a horse.
I think they maybe came because he came back on leave between being in hospital in Malta after Gallipoli, I think, and he came home on leave, and I reckon maybe at that point
You
he
know, longer
realised
than-
he was going to be sent to another regiment, which was
Yeah.
not a mounted regiment.
yeah, he was commissioned into the HLI.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So
That's when
I
he
think-
became second lieutenant.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I think that possibly that's when the horse.
Yeah.
And of course, his name is on a Fintry War Memorial window in Fintry Kirk, which obviously we're
It's
trying
also
to
in
save.
Kippen War Memorial and on
That's
Balfour
what
War
happens.
Memorial.
Yes, quite often that does happen, that they
Mhm.
connect you with different parishes.
Yeah.
We're into a last few stories. We'll probably do some of these quite quickly.
Yes, yes.
The scandal in the Edmonds family. Right, Hugh, this one is. Tell us about the moment. Your great uncle Thomas Edmond was put into Scotland's worst jail.
Yes, Thomas Edmond, the uncle of the one that we showed earlier, he was caught for illicit stilling up Ballochern Glen, which is the glen that runs from the Honey Home up to Eden Valley, that big glen there, and he had a very large. The minutes of the court case proved that it was a huge illicit still he had, because they said they destroyed 200-gallon fermenting tons. So it must have been a fairly big operation, and we found out afterwards, and this was Pat Thompson and Balfron found out what it was, that his brother, Thomas Edmond's brother, James Edmond, who married Jeanette Connell, the story going down through the families was that he had two wives, one at Ballyfark and one at in Glasgow. Pat Thompson did a lot of research trying to find Edmonds in Glasgow, but she couldn't find any Edmond that would be a wife to this James Edmond. So she on her search she discovered there was a John Connell Edmond, who was a son of that James Edmond, and he was in Govan. He was a wine and spirit merchant. So a more feasible answer she came up was that instead of going in to see his wife, he was taken in illicit still to the wine and spirit merchant shop. And I think, to be absolutely honest, I think that's more feasible.
Good bit of laundering from the
But
old days.
anyway, that Thomas Edmond was jailed in Stirling, in the Tallbooth prison and jail in Stirling.
We went to have a look at to see the conditions of what would have happened, and you can do this too, of course. There are tours there. We had found the story in the papers. Let's go past them. In that we know that from the papers we've got this story. I'll just move to them. I think we've got this one where he's. Well, we've got so many little clips here. I was going back. There's one of them is where he's sentenced. This is the case. The judge who is about to pass sentence is given 3 months, which is really tough in that jail. But the previous case, the judge had given him 7 years transportation, so he was not in a good mood that day. So maybe he was quite lucky. But this is us looking at the cells and the conditions.
Yeah, the cell was very, very small, and it had about, I think it was 20 odd people in it. It was only less than half the size of this, and there was only one pot toilet for them all, and that was all. It was deemed to be the worst prison in Scotland.
So we went to look at the old toll booth, where you can climb when you do this experience. I see the top, and the views are wonderful. We're just recommending it to you. Going to move on to a little story where Culcrew Castle might owe you a fortune, and Andrew Haslam, we challenged him the other day there, he'll look into it.
Back on that family tree list, when you go back to about the 1700s, there was a Patrick Edmond who was a blacksmith at Ballyconrain, and in his will it showed that when the Napiers that were in Kilcrook at the time went into liquidation, they owed Patrick Edmond 400 merk Scot for ironwork, mainly railings all the way up the roads, the avenue to Kilcrook, and railings along the roads, right from Home Cottage right along to the corner at the Gunnichen. All that was all iron railings, which were all manufactured or made by Patrick Edmond of Ballyconrain, and he was never paid for them. So they applied to Stirling Sheriff Court and got a writ to recover 400 merk Scot. A merk Scot is 13 and fourpence, in other words, 2/3 of a pound, which in today's money, I think we calculated was about £35,000.
At least, Hugh, at least.
But he never got it. So
So we're talking with Andrew, but just so we said he drinks whiskey, and we left it there. We can't have this Rob Roy gets everywhere. How does he get into your family?
well, the first Edmund in Western Bulgaria was John Edmund, who married Margaret Macleay, who was born in Airthry, which is a farm up the Kippen Road, opposite the road into the caravan site. You'll see there's a gate opposite there. Just up in the field a wee bit, there used to be a farm called Airthry, and that's where Margaret Macleay, who was John Edmund's wife, and they were the first farmers of the Edmonds that were in Western Bulgaria. And seemingly the story that was passed down was that one day they were in the house with all the doors shut, because Rob Roy's men were everywhere at that time, mainly trying to get money from the Duke of Montrose's factor. But anyway, one seemingly had come down the chimney. The chimney was just a room with a big open space in the middle where the fire was, and the cooking and everything went out through this hole in the roof. And one of Rob Roy's men came down there, and my great-great-granny picked up the poker and stuck it in him and told him to keep his innards out of her keep it out of her keel.
So
that was a story. It was passed out. Whether it's true or no, I don't know.
You've been involved with so many groups, the Royal Archmasonic Lodge, lots of others. What is happening here?
Well, that was in 2008. I was installed as the Grand Superintendent of Stirling and Twickmannon by Charles Woolwich Gordon of Esselman. And that made me quite keen, and I did a lot of travelling with them thereafter. That's Charles Woolwich Gordon in the middle.
Very centre. That meant that you went to...
Going away from that for a bit, I told you earlier about being also the Secretary and Treasurer and running the potato trade. This is me being awarded the Hague Trophy by the National Association of Seed Potato Merchants for my services to the industry.
But your Masonic work meant that you had to represent Scotland over 40 countries?
Go to meetings. I don't know how many countries. When I try to start listing them, I get lost.
But you've travelled to all of these countries?
Yes, mainly a lot of African countries. I enjoyed going to Africa. I think the next one is...
So we're coming, just going to go past that and come up to where you're going.
Yeah.
Just to remind you that was us at the opening ceremony here, way back in 2014. But yes, so because of your travels in Africa, you actually have and you're very, very proud of this, an adopted
You'll
daughter.
see my booklet there. That I mean, in 2007, Charles Woolridge Gordon was relaying a foundation stone for an orphanage in Rhodesia, or I should say in Zimbabwe. So I went out with them, and I was very impressed with what they were doing, because there were so many kids there have no parents due to AIDS. They were all orphans, and they decided that this is what where they would spend some money. So they laid the foundation stone, and then the next year went back again, and the building was up, and they were looking for people. The kids didn't get any schooling at all, so they were asking for people to sponsor girls at the school, or girls or boys, and one or two of us. But this little girl, she was standing back on her own, and I said, that's the girl for me. So I sponsored her. It cost me £1, but that's all it cost, $1 per day to school them. So
In
I
the
took
primary
her,
section.
yeah, the primary section. I took her through the primary section, then I took her, it was a bit more when it went into the secondary, but she was quite a bright girl. That's me out in 2012. I went out and she was growing up a good bit more there.
Kept in touch with her all the way.
Yes.
And here she is
That's
today.
and she went on to the secondary and university. She went to Harare University, and she qualified, and now she's an executive with a satellite navigation company, owned by a Finnish company, and she's doing very well.
Can I now just read a bit from her letter to you?
This is once she graduated.
After she's graduated, because she does keep in touch. So, dear Hugh Edmond, first of all, I'd like to thank you for being so generous in sponsoring my education since 2008 up to 2021. Now I'm pleased to inform you that I hold a Bachelor of Technology Honours degree in Electronic Commerce. It's only possible because of you. You've given me the greatest and most powerful weapon in Africa, which is good education for future jobs. The past 4 years in the university were a great experience that I could never take for granted. I made friends that are still friends to date. I learned to be responsible, confident, speak my mind and make connections. Most importantly, the years were not in vain. I left the university as a graduate. Now I face tomorrow with my head held high and fearless because I believe in myself. All the years of acquiring knowledge and experience taught me all of that. I'm so excited to see what the future holds for me, and I believe I'll excel. And she talks about some of the job and the work that she's involved in. She said, I'm doing all right and feeling great about being a graduate. I'm quite a big girl now. I'm 23 years of age and have grown a bit taller. The weather's hot since we're in summer, so it's important to always have sunglasses and sun hat. She asks about you and how the weather's in Scotland. She ends by saying, I really hope you're doing all right. My one wish is to see you and thank you personally for all you've done for me. Until then, it's bye for now. Your loving daughter, Christabel Aaron. She's just wonderful.
Yeah, she was a lovely girl. She's a lovely girl.
Maybe one day that will
Yes,
the meeting.
I don't think I'll manage back out again. It's not the easiest places to go to nowadays, Zimbabwe.
We are at the end of our talk, and we're very happy to take any questions and closing off. If anybody
I might not be able to answer them right now,
but you can always
ask.
go through for a coffee too. And what I'm going to do now then is just say that I hope you've kind of been blown away by the scale of work, the breadth of involvement in so many institutions, and we've only just scraped a little at it. There's so many other parts to it, and it continues because Hugh remains on many committees and works. I've never seen a guy of this age have his diary so full, always just trying to say, can I see you Tuesday? That's always astonishing. And when you began the talk at the beginning, the first time you were saying you were anxious about your memory. Wow.
I don't
Anxious
know.
about you.
I forget things that happened yesterday.
But what we've learned today has just been wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, will we thank Hugh Edmond, NBE.